Population what? Thank you, Zoom.
Nice. So, I mean, the one thing that you do look at trend data, they're saying, University of Nebraska Omaha is saying that by, was it 2040, Crystal, that third of the population, especially in counties, the counties along the Kansas border, will be 65 and over. Rick, I mean, as an economic developer, is that?
I thought you were going to say as somebody approaching.
Is that a good tool, to try to attract an employer by saying a third of our population is retiring?
No.
What's the solution there? If you want to be more inclusive and open, should there be some sort of mechanism to be more, I don't know the right word. Jonathan, what was?
Inclusive.
Be more receptive.
Receptive,
Welcoming, inclusive. Yeah.
It looks so odd, Tom, where you bring in that component. Some of these articles I've read have said our zoning is actually one of the barriers to becoming more diverse and more inclusive. Because it hits people, it keeps them on the market. It keeps them from coming.
Exactly.
So it ties together. And you wouldn't think diversity and zoning would tie together, but you think about it, our zoning codes were basically created in the 50s when we had a whole different, how do I say this?
This is before the civil rights movement.
Yes, things have changed so much, but our zoning, doing the wide streets, a lot of the communities don't have the pedestrian friendly, the bike friendly.
Yep.
That's what the younger people want. It's ties to quality of life. It's what a diverse economy, a diverse workforce wants. And our zoning in many of our communities are. It's just been very.
You didn't go, there was kind of a session where Trevor and I were just at a conference, a lot of site selectors, educational, and there was a session that's kind of talking about diversity inclusion. Did you hear that? I did not, no.
I got about halfway through it, but to kind of go back to Tom's question, one of the entire topic of that panel was diversity of your community, how inclusive you are, what institutional infrastructure, social infrastructure in place to be a welcoming community, especially if you're recruiting a project that's going to bring more diversity in your community. And that really got me thinking, like, what do we have in place? We had an Asian company we were working on, and they wanted to know what kind of groups and social interaction their employees would have in the community, in our community, and we had to look all the way up to Lincoln. I did, so that's very valid.
Can the committee speak up so everyone on Zoom can hear as well? The back row, especially, this microphone's all the way up here. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Not to change the subject from housing necessarily, but the other thing is childcare.
Yeah.
And where does that fly? And I was trying to figure, is that an infrastructure system or is that a community system? It could be both. I mean, and it's that, but that's, if we're going to get a younger workforce and get people into the workforce, childcare is going to be something that needs to be resolved. Available.
The thing is that regulation didn't pass. That bill that was going to limit the number of kids for.
Right. What was that all?
That was horrible.
Yeah. All I know is it was put on hold, which, yeah.
Some of the other stuff and tying both of those childcare housing together is just retaining and recruiting young professionals. That is going to be the difference between Nebraska winning or not, the future. And I'd say specifically in Southeast Nebraska. This is a conversation I just had last week at the Nebraska Chamber and with president for the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce executives. So I was in a room that I probably shouldn't be in, but I was grateful to be there. And they're talking about state branding. What do we want the state to recruit in the future? And then the comment was made, before the pandemic, and I realize we're still moving, so I'm not trying to minimize that, but 40 to 50,000 job openings before, and we're at 60 to 80,000 now. And so they said the issue we have in the state is sheerly bodies. We need more people. And they said, really, the comment, from leaders in Lincoln and Omaha and across the state is we need to start creating more intentional internships for young people that would actually grab and keep them here. Because we have 25,000 high school students that are graduating every year across the state of Nebraska. And we hemorrhage, I say our number one export is educated young people in the state of Nebraska. And I'm sick of it. It's not acceptable. We need to do better. And that's what I'm hearing from leaders across the state. And so I really do think Southeast Nebraska could take a lead in that. But that's a lot of one-on-one conversations with employers. But I mean, in some sense, they're talking about creating like a statewide internship network. But then they're saying, look, you get the kids there, now you need to figure out how to keep them. And that's where we come in, like actually getting people connected in communities. People stay because of relationships. They need a job and they need housing, they need childcare. Yes, all those things, but they stay because of people.
They also have to have the job path, the career path.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because if they don't have a career path at that local community, they're going to lose them.
Yep.
And our region needs to understand that they're competing with the wages in Lincoln and Omaha.
Yep.
And Kansas City.
Yep.
And Des Moines.
Totally.
When we look at wage data, we can't look at just Nebraska. We got to go maybe Midwest. We've got to go broader than Nebraska.
Yep. Chicago, Denver, Kansas City, they're eating their lunch. And our lunch is educated young people.
So that brings us to the second target, the ones that are left. How do we get them back? Because if they're from the Midwest, if they're from Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa,
Right.
they understand the culture. So how do we attract them when they're ready to settle down to come back?
That's one thing that I always think about. I used to work with CEDS with accounting manufacturer, and it would bring in, especially our tech people that are getting people to work on the manufacturing technology. You recruit people from across the country to come in, and they plunk them down in Kansas City, Nebraska. And just like the culture shock that was there about how far is the closest Walmart or Target or Super or whatever, and oh, there's no theater here, that kind of thing. I just think about some of that stuff where when I talk about Humboldt, I talk about like my graduating high school class, like about a third of us, we didn't end up necessarily in Humboldt or Lincoln and Omaha. That's kind of where the other 2/3 are at, but we ended up in other small towns that are similar to Humboldt. I think about the fact that I don't just Humboldt kids to come, but a kid from Deschler or a kid
Totally.
from Wayne or somebody would be able to come down to our area and live in Falls City or Auburn, Nebraska City, and feel comfortable with it because it's close to what they grew up with.
Yep.
It does not necessarily we have to like get the exact same kids back. But we
So-
want these kind
And
of
I think
kids.
that's the education piece that
Yeah,
is
totally.
lacking is I constantly heard over and over again, how do we retain people that are in, how do we recruit the people that grew up here back to our community? What about never lived there before? How do we recruit those people? Then that's when you hear that narrative, it doesn't make those people feel welcome to move to them.
That's one thing I brought up with the school board lately, doing a phase three plan. I said, we've got to figure out a way for parent engagement, not just more newsletters and more emails and more back and forth. We have to figure out a way to connect parents with each other. My oldest son has 30 kids in his class. And I've got about 6 moms that I've known for 20 years. And so if my kid doesn't have a vocab paper that he needs, I send a message out, somebody's going to give me a picture of that. Somebody's going to remind me what the spelling words is, which we are. And I would think about like, even when we start bringing families into our school district, like a kindergarten roundup, we sat at a table, we were given paperwork to fill out, they lectured us and kind of went through the daily schedule, about what it's going to look like, and then we were done. And I looked around the room and I'm like, I kind of know half the people in here, but I don't know the other half. There wasn't a time for us to walk around and say, oh, hi, I'm Ty's mom, you know, or you're just going to make that bonding thing. Sometimes think about, you know, we come to our meeting to sit in our spot, we get in our lane, and then we're gone. And like I said, they want to give us more all calls and more text messages and all of that, but they don't give us a time to sit together and actually talk about stuff. If we communicate, well, yeah, we get a ton of calls and text messages and email. Like there's not a parent organization, there's not those groups, there's nothing those peers that connect people. For me, like I said, I've lived there my whole life, I know everybody, it's not that big a deal, but I'm trying to think about how the people in our community, as working professionals with young families, how they get connected. Organizations are used to be, you know, club or things like that. You might be able to meet people. If you're working from home and sending your kids to school and you're going to the grocery store and that's all you're doing, you know, how do we reach you living rooms and get you out. And school is it's a great place for young professionals to make them connect.
We have a couple, on our paper, we have a couple new one reporter, one on the tech side. They're brand new. They're like 2021, and they're from out of state. They've been recruited to Nebraska for these jobs. And so I was talking with the editor yesterday. We're like, how are we going to get these two people? Because our young professionals, honestly, they're not 20 in that group. They're more. Yeah, you have 28 to 35, and they just, so we want to make sure we get these kids, because I'm sorry, to me, a 20-year-old's a kid. You're old enough- I'm old enough to be your mom. How do we get them connected to the community?
How are you defining educated young people? Is that education, how are we defining that? As in information or school education?
That's a good question. I don't think I've even thought really nuanced in that, other than to say, I mean, you think about the cost in Stewart, for example, it's $12,500 a year to educate a kid. So it's basically $150,000 from K through 12 to put a kid through public school. And it's kind of like, what is our return on investment? That to me is the disconnect. And I'm even struggling with all the scholarships we give out to the community. I'm like, what hook is there to like come back to our community? There's nothing. There's no expectation. And it's like, not that everything should be transactional, right? Because that feels slimy. But I don't know. I just think we need to have more results driven work, specifically related to education and obviously for me, education needs to be connected with business, which we're starting to do some of that stuff, but we gotta, like, as they said in that room, they said, we gotta put this thing on steroids. We need to do it now.
We know people want to come back to small towns
Yes,
and raise their
absolutely.
families. So we know that part of it's there. It's figuring out.
We gotta have the house and the childcare.
Right.
And the internet.
The internet is huge. The internet is huge.
There's so many people that work from home for big insurance companies and tech companies and
Yep.
medical coding, transcribing, like those opportunities are there. Those are good paying jobs. That the officer next to me is being run by a woman that's 1-year-old twins, so trying to back occasionally. They're building a house out in the country. She can't get a thousand for jobs. So she's coding from home. You know, it's like,
Oh,
I guess her cell phone linked to her computer would go fast.
because a lot of the companies, just the broadband speed
Yeah.
before the hire you to
exactly.
work out of your home. Scary. It is scary, and I know that because my sister lives in the country, and the insurance company she works with tested her broadband a couple different times, and she has two connections because of, you gotta have that backup if one goes down.
This is a good idea.
This ties in to the jobs and the retention, maybe not young talent retention, but retention overall, it's a recruitment of people, and that's spousal employment. You hear all the, somebody's hiring an engineer at their manufacturing plant, their wife's unless they're a teacher or a nurse, they may not, it's difficult to find them, if they have a career, it's difficult sometimes to find that career, and that's where the broadband ties back in again and everything else, so.
City Council has talked about that after the prison thing, is like it's an industry for education. So unless you're a nurse or a teacher. A lot of it is I work surveys living in Syracuse, so the spouse can drive like in a Omaha, the other one drives through prison and comes up. County's getting all. That's
I think that's a different, I know transportation is mentioned under built systems, but yeah, you're exactly right. You've got, that could also be under community systems, just the family infrastructure to make things work. The broadband, the car that can function, yeah.
Kim, Brooke, do you have any input?
This is Brooke. I think I'm hearing most of the comments. I may have missed some, but definitely I'm tracking with what's been shared. One thing that kind of I caught on, and I think it was something Crystal had mentioned around this engagement and connectedness. And I think about even some of our past work on planning and developing blueprints. And then once it comes to some of the execution items, it tends to come back to, quite honestly, the people in this room. So that's been on my mind a little bit. How do we better engage with the communities, the businesses, and get them more bought in and plugged in? And some of it, in my mind, goes back to how we can empower folks and to really have a sense of pride and to help them and guide them in taking initiative on things. And I don't know where that plugs into this overall plan, but it seems to be a continued theme throughout this planning and this work. That's been on my mind a bit too. And I know the state's doing some interesting and cool work around branding and internships. And I don't know to what degree or what role we can play or align on around that. But I just heard actually this morning they're doing some work with Arch Rival. So and it sounds like it's pretty cool. So from like an attraction standpoint and a talent piece, that's certainly a theme that doesn't seem to be going away. I'm curious, what we can think through or build upon from not only what the state's doing, but maybe even what the region can do as a subset of that.
Brenda?
This is Kim, and I've been listening as well, and those are all the conversations that we're having down here in Auburn as well. So I agree, all issues that need to be addressed.
Thanks. So that's going to take us into the SWOT analysis, where we can be able to actually air our voices and talk about what exactly we want for the region. So the point of the SWOT analysis is to actually come up with priorities that we can focus on for this 5-year period. So from 2020 to 2025. So this SWOT analysis can actually give us the vision to get our priorities right. So if we miss it, at this point, we've missed it for 5 years. So we actually want to be very intentional about picking out priorities. And figuring out the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The strengths and weaknesses are centers around internal factors, and opportunities and threats centers around external factors. And at this point, I think we are going to split up into focus groups. I don't know how that's going to work with the way the tables are set. Do you have any ideas? Okay. So how many are we though? So these are the 2 focus groups. I believe some individuals have passion. So if you have a focus group that you're interested in, now is the time to select yourself in a focus group.
You're gonna make us choose.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah, I'll just 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 2. So 1's equitable growth and 2's connectivity and resilience. So let's start again, Tom, please. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Kim and Brooke, who's 1? Kim is 1 and Brooke is 2. Yeah, let's get it going.
Got one
Yeah.
over here and two
Yeah,
over
one's
here.
over here.
Thank you, Kelly.
My inner mom.
And just to make things clear, this is a SWOT analysis on the 16 counties in the Sand region. Not Sand as an organization, but like the
Yeah.
but the geographical area of southeast Nebraska.
Yeah.
So one's on this side.
Yeah.
You don't even have to move.
I know that.
Advertising before, whatever it was. Like that. I said, well, I gotta get your opinion of our,
This is your other teammate.
I shared the Nebraska
Hi, Kim.
tourism tagline with them.
Hello.
And basically, all their jaws hit the table if they weren't laughing.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not the image we need to be portraying. I mean, I thought it was edgy at the time,
Yeah.
but everybody from the outside, nobody, which tagline?
Not for
Nebraska's
everyone.
not for everyone.
I mean, it got us on the late night shows or whatever.
But
So,
I'm sure that's something the state chamber is probably trying to get. I think it's the meeting that Jonathan was at.
The tourism side is great.
Yeah, but it doesn't do anything for the rest of us.
Kim, can you hear us okay?
I can.
Okay,
Hi, Kim.
turn on the video so you can see us too.
Yeah. I can see you.
Yeah, when you were talking about spousal employment, I remember when working in Maryville, Missouri, that was a huge issue because we had Kawasaki, Energizer, Bleaching, and of course, Northwest Missouri State. And it was, university was an outlet to a degree, but
Decent roads, no.
it was really hard. Finding
This comment was
some of
made
the
to me by. our
engineers that
director
were
this year. He's like, you can get.
Kawasaki,
small towns
Energizer.
pretty easily. He's like, you have decent roads to get.
It was hard to find any
Coming from a
spouses.
newspaper editor.
Employment.
Things about that.
We tried really hard to find ways to engage in some other capacity.
We have roads.
We created clubs, activities. We would do monthly events to where we invite them to the historical society and we do pitches there.
Find 10 minutes is all.
Oh, man.
Oh, good turn.
Equitable growth.
Yes. Internal, external. Workforce, business development, housing, education sector.
It would- Housing, would that be? I think a weakness would be, I think last time we looked outside of Lancaster County. Oh, yeah. Something like 60%, was it two sets? Hey, Coach, you have a copy of the books?
Yes. I think so.
Thank you. So the housing part, we were putting together the sets last time. Something like 60% of the houses in our region.
Oh, yeah. Built before
Was built before 1980. And to me, that certainly is a weakness. Pre-1979 is lead paint was allowed. So that's kind of a-
So age of housing stock is one of the weaknesses.
Yeah. Yeah, where is that?
Yeah, I'd say that's the extreme.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're more in Richardson County, 86% of the houses were built before 1960. Same region overall, 73%. In the US, it's 55%. Nebraska, it's 64%.
I think it's really interesting that we have a staff member in our office, I'm gonna talk about Ryan. His first connection to Sun was he was trying to buy a house and go through the owner occupied rehab.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to connect people, you give them something to be responsible for. It's a person, it's an asset, it's the land, it's something. He was trying to be responsible for the house. And I think he's having more fun managing a housing program than fixing an old house. It's a little bit easier to push the papers around than actually deal with a structure that's rendered unusable by regulations, by prohibitive costs, by the fact that he has to still go out and get a full-time job to pay for the materials, supplies, and then find the time to work on the house. And he's, until recently was caring a lot for his older grandfather. Let's say he had wanted him to live with him, or he had adapted the house to an aging senior family member to co-live, someone to be in a wheelchair, not easily in an old Nebraska house. So you're not giving young people the tools to become deeply responsible for each other, for their surrounding environment. They're not going to stay. I'm glad to be sent.
Along those lines, when I bought my first house, there's no way I could have afforded to swap out an air conditioning unit or an HVAC system that was probably barely functional when I bought that house. So not only do you have an aging house, workforce housing inventory, but a lot of times it's a failing workforce housing inventory.
So are we supposed to go through each of these categories?
Yeah.
So like,
So or do we do it like equitable growth, strengths, and so group it together and
Yeah.
do SWOT?
so on housing as a component of that, stock, affordability, age, the key weaknesses there.
Are there any strengths in housing?
I think there's some great programs
Yeah.
through Sense specifically in harbor communities. A lot of times when we get calls about those, I mean, most of those are owner occupied rehab,
Right.
right? It's the rental market, the demand's up so much for that. There's really not a lot of incentives.
Yeah.
Outside of the recent one, I don't know, was that, Tobias has talked about it. Is that still owner occupied?
Yeah, so
Workforce housing?
workforce housing, yeah. And I think along those lines, this is the third state I've worked in, and Missouri, Kansas, their legislators turn a blind eye towards this. They all just kind of shrug their shoulders and expect the private sector to take care of it. It's not going to, especially in small
We
towns.
don't have the economies of scale to
No.
build 20 brand new.
Yeah, a
houses.
developer can go to a suburb of Kansas City and sell $300,000 homes all day, or they can go to Albany, Missouri and sell a $150,000 home every 6 months. But so I think along the lines of what you're saying is our elected officials actually take an interest in it. That's a strength.
Yeah, we're well situated for suburban growth. In most of our communities, I would say. Well, right now, it's kind of switched. Cost of lumber.
So if that's a strength, but yet we still have some of these other issues, then is the opportunity
To grow.
communicating more of those programs out to the
Yeah, maybe so.
public? I mean, is that?
Yeah.
I think communication is an opportunity in everything,
Yeah.
because it's, to me, I mean, I'm 50, and it's like, how we used to communicate, I still don't feel like, that's archaic, but yet, when I talk to my kids who are in their late 20s, they're like, that's not practical, or whatever, I mean, it's like, and that doesn't, that's not something that hits their radar, so you have to figure out how to communicate to people on their turn, in those 20-year-old terms, and I struggle with that in my profession right now. I mean, like, we have a Facebook page, we have a website, and we have all these things. It's like, I'm spoon feeding, I feel like I'm spoon feeding them already, but I know I'm not getting through to people what not communicating to people what's out there or the necessary information. So it's like, you know, is it having focus groups and that kind of thing?
I think that's the question about branding and how that it's used. Like if I'm thinking, okay, my husband and I decided to go move to South Dakota. I don't think I would go Google like South Dakota tourism, what's your motto?
Yeah.
But you know, but the idea, the intentionality of trying to figure out how to drive people through a common message. But that goes to your point, what mechanism do you use for it?
Mhm.
Because like I said, I'm not going to go to, you know, Nebraska, visit nebraska.gov or whatever the official branded thing is. But so how do you hold those resources together, but yet put it in a way that's accessible to people who can actually find that. Like I said, they want to move to looking at Waverly as an option. Like, what are they going to look at? What's going to catch their interest?
I will say, if I was a younger man, I would move to Michigan. Just because Better Michigan, red might come out. We need like a
Yeah, like you said,
Larry
like
the Cable Guy's not
California.
here.
You said like the California video. I'm just thinking like what limited commercials I actually see.
Yeah.
That, like, or whether that's
Hey
something
guys,
that-
we also identify the strength, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. You should also come up with about 5 priorities, 5 to 7 priorities. So
We need about 5 more minutes.
Yeah,
At least 5 more minutes.
Crystal, Crystal, you guys talking about housing and the opportunity for messaging and stuff. Maybe there should be a more concerted effort educating the employers and having packets of information with the employers because they're probably the first interaction with these people coming to town.
Wait. Users and benefactors.
You guys, I don't know, we've had internal conversations about this, and I think last time we said strategic planning sessions, we talked about their state elected officials. It seemed like they are working at some level towards addressing a lot of these, whether it's workforce, or business, or housing. What about locally elected officials? Because I've worked with, and this is not an indictment on them, like county elected officials, and they are completely out of touch with this.
It's a different breed.
Yeah, but it still needs to start there.
Yeah, they're busy with roads and bridges.
Exactly.
Gravel.
I was
all
just county, my dad's a county commissioner. My mom was a county treasurer. So they think such big picture and they think infrastructure. I mean, that's what people come to them for, is the infrastructure type of piece. And so when you're asking them about housing and stuff like that, they're like, that's on the municipalities, that's on the cities, the villages, the whatever, you know? I don't think that hits their radar, you know? So it does.
On that,
You guys have a very engaged group in your county.
Yeah. Countywide.
Yeah, but Jonathan's blessed with that, and Lisa's blessed with that. Kim, how often, I know you represent Auburn, but how often do you engage your county commissioners?
well, not very often. We do try on occasion, but like you guys say, they're only focused on roads and bridges. We go and talk to them about economic development and they're not concerned, or they don't, I don't know if they don't understand, or I know when, Stephanie, I know you're there, but I know when
My dad's the county commissioner. For county commissioner.
I know, like a couple of them had said, oh, they're interested, or they know that economic development's a great need, but then when they get in office, they don't address it. I'm wondering if maybe on a broader state level, when they're having county commissioners meetings and specific to county commissioners, maybe the economic development and all of those things that go along with it, they need to be having sessions, and they need to be trained on some of these issues, and that it is their issue too. It's not just roads and bridges.
You did the webinar in February. We had Jay Gardner in his book, right?
Yeah.
So that's NACO,
That's
right?
NACO, yeah.
Right. And is it partially also a funding piece. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
counties receive, this many tax dollars. I mean, they really don't, out of the whole tax pie, they don't get a whole lot of tax dollars. So it's hard. And when you're talking about repairing roads and bridges, it costs a lot of money. And so I think that, it's easy for them to say, okay, we have to prioritize something,
Sure.
and so that's the way they do it.
A lot of
But
it,
Stephanie,
I want to say a lot of
Stephanie,
cases,
on that,
roles.
Yeah.
on that point though, if they did focus on some economic development, they would maybe be able to increase the pot of money. Where roads and bridges are only taking the money and not bringing anything in,
Sure.
economic development would bring money in.
Absolutely.
Well, I think about like the barn dominium example, because I know like I talk to people that say like now the county minimums are 2 acres, you can't like, so it's, but you think about if you build a new house and you can get your acreage purchased and build a house on that, how much more tax dollar, that brings into the county to help pay for roads and bridges and
Yep.
gravel and everything else.
If you look at counties like Saunders County and you look at all the acreages out around Wahoo and Ashland and everything,
Yeah.
the county's getting
Yes.
the benefit of the economic development that's taking place where a lot of this advantages or strengths, I think, for the region is location,
Sure.
proximity to Lincoln, Omaha, and I'd go so far as for the southeastern corner to say Kansas City
Mhm.
from an access and livability
Interstate and
livability
railroad
standpoint.
too. Yep.
Now I lost my other point. Keep going. It'll come back to
Yeah,
me.
so if you get these new houses built and you have property that's increasing in value, then that's a trickle down effect to get those tax dollars.
Absolutely.
So,
And I don't know if they can still do it or not, but I'll go back to Valley County 20 years ago. They found a way they use inheritance tax dollars to do some economic development, fund some economic development things.
That's
No,
cool.
York does. I thought York does that.
Maybe they do, but
It was just general funds.
Valley County used inheritance funds.
how does that work?
Oh, they use inheritance tax for the call center. And then,
Yeah.
And then for the Mortensen industrial site.
Yeah, I think that's right.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, that was 20 years ago.
So, all these counties and municipalities are getting this ARPA money. Maybe there should be some education or some kind of awareness, like, how this money could be for the long haul and not just fix some roads and bridges that, they've been wanting to fix and not saying that they're not important, but I think having this ARPA money, some big things could happen that would be more impactful.
With the limitations, they're gonna have a hard time on finding infrastructure. And we talked about this at the last NEDA board is as local boots on the ground economic developers, hopefully they turn to us and we could be the experts of how they can do it. Ultimately, we say, here's a program, here's a few things. Let us spend the money for you in a way that's impactful, not just on gravel.
Yeah, I know we've had conversations with county commission, county boards as well. They're asking how they can use the money. And there's a very narrow lane in how you can use it. It's not, there's not a lot of flexibility and latitude in how it can be programmed. So
I think there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration between counties, municipalities, and school districts.
Yeah.
If there's some common goals that that's what we're looking at.
That's where I think broadband could be, the big push, that's one humongous push that can impact, that makes it so that our areas are livable and workable for everybody.
how's Waverly going to use your money?
We don't know yet.
You don't know because you're not the mayor.
I'm not the mayor. Or the council, I get no vote.
So maybe like partnerships is an opportunity there to continue
Yeah.
to find ways to strengthen and grow
Collaboration.
those partnerships and collaborations.
What about some of these other topics?
Sure.
I'm not exactly sure what we're supposed to do on page 2.
Yeah, you get the sense that there's gonna be another.
Vision.
in our lifetime.
I'm not sure. Business development.
I think we're supposed to, So one of the things that we're working with Kim on, and I don't know if you guys see value in this or not, work keys, are you familiar with that?
Mhm.
We're trying to,
They've done a lot, almost all throughout Missouri, haven't they?
yeah.
Yes.
Omaha is moving towards that direction as well. And we're gonna try to work with Richardson, Nemaha County to try to figure some way to replicate that here.
Mhm.
But would you guys see value in connecting employers? Well, I heard it already, employers, educators, and transitioning workforce, finding some way to connect them. So kids coming out of high school, connect them with the employers, people that may be looking for jobs, connect them with employers.
Really hit home in what we just did earlier this
Heartland.
year in our Heartland conference. There was a whole bunch about that and really good examples. I think it was out of Iowa, programs that were
With work keys in particular? Or?
not with work keys in particular.
I don't think I was
You weren't at that session?
during that session, no.
It was awesome. It was just a school in Iowa and they actually renamed their
Oh,
area.
yes.
I can't
Yeah,
think
it was
of
in that
but it
first
was like,
day.
They decided, oh, people don't know what so-and-so hills is. We're gonna just be Southern Iowa or Southwestern.
Yeah,
Iowa.
it was
And it was-
something hills, yeah.
Yeah, they decided to just make their region a lot more identifiable. And then they said, well, we're going to go after these NAICS codes and we're gonna make sure you can go after any career path in these. And we're gonna cover 18 different ones and make sure that our kids are supported the whole way through. It was one of my favorite presentations out of the whole Heartland. It was just really optimistic.
Interesting.
Mhm.
It all ties together along that. And I think that, and you hit it on earlier, on the parents and communication, but this whole workforce preparedness comes back to the parents piece too, of helping them understand their kid doesn't have to go to a four-year school. And that there are great jobs out there that only require a two-year program or a certificate.
I agree with that. I struggle with it. Like, what more can we do? Because we've been talking about this for 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We finally figured out, like, we need to get to the parents. We knew we need to get to the guidance counselors in the schools. We need to get to the kids, but we need to get to. So that talk around the kitchen table is positive about the community. And some communities, I know we've seen that shift change just by surveying the kids. You know, can they see themselves back in their hometown? Can they see themselves owning a business in their hometown? That those efforts have worked, but it's still not enough.
I think over the last couple of years and trying to work with what we did, Kim, we're trying to work with that manufacturers partnership in Southeast Nebraska. But just my getting more exposed to the role of the ESU. I think there may be a key partner ally in this whole thing of getting it to the schools. And I think what Jonathan's piloting with ESU 6 and their schools and the employers and what Zane is supposed to match. I think that's one answer to that possible answer
Want
or program.
To regionalize it that
Yeah.
way, not have to feel like you have to reach out to all 12 individual teachers that may or may not, but you have to put a program together that all the superintendents may go, oh yeah, that's great, sign our school up, and all of a sudden it's, it's there.
So I found that, I'll save for another discussion. We're not getting much done now.
Well, I think, and also reaching kids at a younger age, don't wait till they're in high school.
Right.
I think that, getting those middle school kids is, because they still care about, they're interested in things, they are.
I found that, like, the Access Public Schools, there's some tremendous, like, career programs and school to work programs that already exist, that they do a really good job of promoting on Twitter, but parents aren't on Twitter, they're on Facebook, that's number one. And number two, when I talk about, they're sending kids to, professional service, they're sending kids to McDonald's before they're sending them to NEAPCO. And talking to them, well, last 10 years ago, when they talked to NEAPCO, well, OSHA can have kids here. Well, they didn't need 50 people today, 10 years ago, in NEAPCO, now they do, so they're ready to play.
And there have been changes in some of those regulations
So
too.
if the time is right, that's what we're doing, we're getting all of them together and just ground bag lunch and brainstorming.
Some of those apprenticeships, some of those rules and regulations have changed to make it easier to get a younger student within a manufacturing facility.
I think apprenticeships and internships are a key thing when employers are just begging for employees. I mean, that's a way to get those people in there.
I use myself as an example. Small town kid, I was undeclared in my major, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. No one ever talked to me about manufacturing. I took all these different classes and eventually I kind of got a weird job as a manufacturing accountant, but I loved being on the floor and being with inventory and purchasing, but no one ever talked to me about that. I didn't know that was happening in towns around me. That probably would have been a really good fit for me.
Well, and you thought they were making dog food. You didn't understand that they need inventory, they need, those
Between
kind of
going
things.
to looking at CJ Foods inventory, like Aaron, some of those other pieces that are using those smart manufacturing models. Oh my gosh, that's so interesting to me. Like you can show that, show how it's made. You know, I'm there like watching the manufacturing process. Like I've been a good kid to like point in that direction, but I didn't know what it was and no one talked to me about it.
You would even be here.
I wouldn't even be here today. I'd be running, I'd be buying stuff, or I don't know what I'd be doing. I'd be doing something.
Yeah.
I'd be in the automation plant somewhere.
How about we got one thread, aging population?
That's what I wrote too, yeah.
So not only aging population, aging workforce.
Yeah.
So talked about a little bit about this. So there's a lack of diversity in the area. Is that a threat?
I think it's a threat.
Yeah.
Or just a lack of diversity, maybe not so much as just a lack of inclusiveness when we're exposed to the.
Yeah, I get it. Is it an internal or external caused
Right.
situation? It's a little of both, probably.
So is pay an issue as well? Because I remember they talk about Missouri Star Quilt at Heartland.
Missouri Star Quilt? I don't.
Missouri Star Quilt.
No. Oh, we start quilt? No.
Yeah.
Oh, quilt.
In Hamilton.
So this is a project that we worked on. I was in Missouri, small town, home to JCPenney's, actually. They were dying, their downtown was vacant, and they created this industry, Missouri Star Quilt. And we asked, they were bringing these 5-star chefs from New York and Chicago. They get them to live in Hamilton, Missouri. We asked them how you do this, and the answer was pay them more. Is that an issue here? I thought I heard someone mention that.
Pay is a weird issue at this point in time anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, but
I think manufacturers are starting to recognize that as an issue. We've done done quite a few BRE visits recently in communities in this region. And one company in particular decided they need, and it's manufacturing, but it's not a clean manufacturing per se. They raised their pay starting hourly wage $2 plus an hour, and they're full. They didn't have an opening.
Yeah.
You think about the cost of turnover and temp agencies and everything else that they were doing before, trying to fill those spots.
So I think some of them are starting to recognize that. Now that's going to impact other people, but it certainly benefits the workforce.
Well, and then as housing prices
Yeah.
and construction material costs and all of that starts to.
And another one was recognizing they bumped their wage rate up, not nearly like that, but they've also recognized they need to improve their benefit package.
Sure.
We just got done with Gage County and, well, really Southeast Nebraska wage and benefit survey. We got 16 respondents, which is 8 of them not from Beatrice. I had no idea who I was, so I was actually really pleased with that. And found that the ones that are clamoring the most for employees and bitching the loudest are paying the least.
Yeah.
So, and with that, we've seen them choose, we've seen them open up I'm gonna give them away now, but a downtown hiring center, 6 and Court in Beatrice. You walk in, interview, train, drug testing, all this there. They raised their wages, their sign-on bonuses, added a 3rd shift, so you do a 4-day work week, 3-day weekend. So they're ready to get, they're hungry. So,
those 3-day weekends are pretty key things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an awesome benefit.
they actually have one that's a 3-day week. 1 shift, so you could do a
3-day week.
3/12s. And then you're full-time, so you get the benefits. And then you want to have another job, you have another job. You want to go fishing, you just go fishing.
Yeah.
You do that at FAST as well.
At FAST?
Yeah, you can work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 36 hours, get paid full-time benefits.
Yeah, I think
What's the starting wage over there?
Smart Chicken has some of those too.
I
Smart
think
Chicken.
the good employers are recognizing the need for flexibility, the need for better pay. And I don't think we should consider automation a threat. I mean, I think automation for our rural communities is a good thing because it'll keep the companies there.
Yep.
So
And it'll enhance, capital investment, it'll enhance the quality and the wages of the people that are already there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe the opportunity could be like flexible job opportunities.
I just think somehow, again, this all comes back and wrapped around communication in some way, shape, or form. And then what is the appropriate role for SEND in these things?
The other thing that always blew my mind when I moved up here was I represented 15 counties in Northwest Missouri and Northeast Kansas. We had one that, and those 50 counties, we have less than 5 hospitals. And it seems like every county here has got,
At least one.
and they're nice. They're not, I mean, some of those hospitals down there, they were obviously built in the 40s. And services they offered were very limited. To me, that is a great retention tool.
Yeah, that's a great spousal employment tool, even if they're not in healthcare. Office, billing and records.
And all
Yeah.
that. all that.
Well,
My wife's worked in 2 hospitals now because of me moving around.
Sure.
And part of that is maybe impacting why our ages are higher, average age in those rural counties, because they have that access
Access
to
to
help.
to healthcare.
Yeah.
So I don't,
So in that case, you're keeping their wealth in the
There.
community.
that helps with the inherited stuff and being able to have that transitional housing and
Yep.
assisted living and nursing homes. That's one of the things that when we talk about County County was that they didn't have assisted living. And so people were moving to live in
Yeah.
Omaha and they would never come back to the
Yeah,
nursing
how many
homes. They're
units
up
did they
there.
put in on that?
They put a good size, but
Yeah.
it's kind of helped ramp that up. So I mean, P-Cal was taking a little bit to get going and financially until they started to hit that number they needed to make that profit. It was tough, but
They got a
yeah, they
USDA.
got USDA for that. And it's a really nice facility.
I think generational wealth and philanthropy is probably a really good strength and opportunity.
Yeah,
for us too.
no better place to look at that than Valley County and how they've done that.
Are we identifying priorities as well? That is the goal.
Do we get more time for that?
Well, the other group are down.
I got Jonathan though.
Yeah, so we did about 7 priorities. Should be fine.
For each of these.
Or just for the equitable growth altogether.
Yeah, for the equitable growth altogether.
Yeah.
So the SWOT should transform into.
Okay.
Okay, that might not be quite so hard.
Yep, okay.
Captain, 8 minutes.
Okay. So maybe just like talk about housing programs is one, trying to find ways to bring more money into it, communicate what's out there, make sure that it's flexible to the needs of the communities.
I think the biggest challenge I've seen with the housing programs I've worked through, whether it's development districts or directly from the state, is the pretty narrow population that it fits, especially in owner occupied, where if they qualify, even if they're 120% LMI, it's too much. The house is too much. Even when construction prices were pre-COVID. So how do we?
Giving us the
define
dum-dum.
that?
You've given us
We
the
got the
dum-dum.
dummies.
Oh.
It's taking us so long.
Okay.
Just, I don't know how that translates into broadening, beefing up the existing programs, broadening access to our target demographics.
Sure.
If you give someone that can't afford to fix up an old house, they can't.
Yeah, we still have dilapidated property and they have not elevated their quality of life.
Yeah, even if you help change their HVAC or put a new roof on, there's a lot of things that they may not be ready for.
I would think that something, and we touch on this, but and I think we could do, and I understand it's not tied directly just to resources, but doing a better job of communicating with our locally elected officials, because they can be huge advocates.
Mhm.
And whether it's they're handing out money or just standing behind the podium and talking about the importance of something, that can really carry a lot of weight. So maybe there's something that can be done. on those.
Sure. The intentionality of how we present
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
There's some wordsmithing to be done after we present these, but I mean,
Yeah.
at least gives you the gist of the conversations, yeah.
Oh, and I think on behalf of elected officials, I'm not an elected official, but on behalf of elected officials, they also like having something warm and fuzzy to talk to their
Sure.
constituents about. So if they have something, a program that's available for their constituents, they like having constituents buy-in or whatever you want to say. I mean, they don't want to just be seen as rule makers and enforcers, you
Maybe
know?
helpers.
Yeah.
A lot of the small business leads have gotten them from elected officials and banks, local banks.
Yeah.
don't want to make that loan, but they want you to make that loan.
Or take a little bit of the risk.
So how do we articulate that?
I just said communication act officials, like we can
Boom.
say. like we can change.
As far as workforce goes, I think there are ways to communicate, like Kim was saying, if there's a way that we can work with employers to, and school educators.
Throw the ESU in there too.
Yeah, and the issues to help strengthen those relationships.
I have improved BRE coordination with local ESUs, employers, DOL, through job fairs.
Sounds good.
We'll let these two play with the.
And what you had spoken to that effect about getting your BREs out there,
Yeah.
making it competitive between employers. They're clearly winning the market.
Yeah.
And they know it, and everyone else knows they need to step their game up. It really is what we were trying to problem solve at Heartland, about how to sell BREs. It's like, go to the job fair, put it on a flyer, make your community brag about their wage and benefit averages.
I just feel like there's a system in place to deviate a little bit. Like when we got the full court press experience when we were recruited to Beach County.
Sure.
Like, how can we do that for everybody?
Yeah.
Like,
Some of the schools do a great job with that too. And my husband is like driven, they've been driven around town and they'll point out places and like, yeah.
They rented out the brewery for us.
Sure,
Had a-
yeah.
just little stuff.
Because you were important.
Exactly.
No,
Not all of us are VIP.
But I'm just saying, how can we like replicate that somehow, like the welcoming committee?
Well, and that's
and
on the
connection?
HR for
Ties to
those.
the diversity and inclusive.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
The
sorry.
biggest part of that, like the people they invited to that meeting, our age, people that we would be interacting with, they've all been. It's cool.
I think part of that would be then being connected with the HR for those companies. You know, and maybe communities needing to share information with the HR people, because the HR people are just worried about getting people hired,
Exactly, yeah.
you know.
That's, you can also include realtors, because I find that a lot of times their first connection is with a realtor that they've met online or have called. And they're only worried about selling a house, and then they don't connect you to the community.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Kim.
I need 5 or 3.
You have 3 minutes.
No, how many do we need?
5,
4.
just a minimum of 5. 5 is okay.
Okay.
We talked about location as being an advantage. I mean, does that tie into a brand? I mean, can we really try and brand all of Southeast Nebraska and market it that way? Or is it more segmented in different parts of the region?
There's something for everybody.
Yeah.
Communities are very diverse.
Yeah.
It's accessible.
Yeah.
It's totally
So
accessible.
I don't know if that's,
I like that.
I don't know if that's, Senate can play a role in either developing a regional brand or supporting the communities, their counties, developing their own brands or messaging.
And I wonder how many of our counties have had that conversation about what does it mean that we're Thayer County? Like, what is that we're, you know?
What makes us unique? What's your value proposition to somebody who's looking for a place to live?
Yeah, and I know people that have, countywide economic developers and countywide organizations have done that. But there's some of our counties that don't even have any paid staff at all. Pawnee County has no paid staff, and I don't think anybody's ever said, what does Pawnee County mean?
One thing that strikes me that we didn't really touch on is business development.
Yeah.
In Beatrice, we have 0.3 businesses per 100 people. The national average is 3.1. It's just not an entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Sure.
I find that county-based roles that are regional have a harder time doing that because they don't have those personal connections with the local first-generation entrepreneurs. So some kind of support system. I don't know what that is.
That's a good idea. We've talked about that again. We just don't know what
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
We were going to bring an intern in to do some work like that. It's being missed. But I wouldn't expect an intern to come in and help people start businesses right now.
Yeah.
All they've worried about for the last 4 years is what they're going to get in Legos. They don't know the bankers and they don't know these personal connections.
And
It's
it's
not
a
an insult. I'm
challenge.
going to get Legos.
There's a
We
challenge.
just had Pizza Hut.
There's a challenge in the United States, especially small towns, where if you start a business and you fail, 5 years from now, people will remember, you started that small business and you failed.
Right.
In other countries, that's not the case.
Right. Rick, of all the site structure conferences, have you ever heard Keynote or any other speaker talk about how important it is to have a nice community with a vibrant downtown and small businesses and shops? Or has it all been just recruit sites, infrastructure?
It's placement. I mean, you heard the conversations about placemaking and some of the discussions this week, and I found this validated what I was told earlier last week, what's going on in North Platte, what they're doing with their mall, is they're changing it into some residential, multifamily, some entertainment area, and the keynote speaker from Spencer Levy from CBRE, he talked about that is, somebody asked him the question, well, what should we be doing with our shopping malls? And he literally, line by line, what they're doing in North Platte as a way to better use those facilities into, and I think you could apply this to a strip mall as far as that goes. I mean, so yeah, I joked about it. I had prospect visits last week in the two communities. Both evenings, we ended up in the craft brewery. At the end, that was the end of the day, because that's a new gathering place, and that's shows people vibrancy and
Yeah, I like the idea.
trails, culture,
Yes.
parks, interact. It's all part of it.
I like the entrepreneurial communities kind of approach to things as well. That doesn't have to be just people creating businesses, but it's community is thinking entrepreneurially about what they have, trying to create those opportunities.
It's kind of what they call it. They call it the third space or something like that?
Yes.
Where it's these kind of community areas.
We're ready, Kelechi.
Okay.
I do want to say, you guys were talking about community branding. Auburn is starting on that. Auburn Development Council we're working with Marilyn Schlake and through the ECAP program, and then Rex Nelson through CPI, and we're going to begin that process.
Great.
Told me that.
What are you gonna brand it, Kim?
Well, I don't know. That's, been the struggle for Auburn all these years. We don't have an identity. We don't know who we are. So hopefully we figure that out.
My college professor couldn't read my.
Any suggestions, Stephanie?
No, I was just trying to think. I mean, you have such a unique situation where you have two major US highways going through town.
I know.
Or two major highways. You're drop off the Missouri.
You're in the middle of everywhere.
In the middle of it,
Yeah, I mean, and you're in the
about
middle of your
we're in
county
the
kind
middle
of thing, and
Not in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of everywhere.
Full of people without words. Really weird.
Yep. You're right.
middle of everywhere sounds kind of cool, actually.
Oh, yeah, like, I love you.
We weren't gonna move down.
But like the address is state your claim, so they've got something to hold on to, but
Yeah.
Nebraska City has the apples they claim,
yeah.
and the trees. So I know we've struggled all these years. We've struggled. So I don't know. Hopefully we figure it out.
I have to leave before 1.
It'd be cool.
Okay.
I got double booked. I was gone and my coworker scheduled me.
So at some point we can come down and go through all the programs because you just joined.
Oh,
So,
officially? Awesome. I hadn't heard officially yet.
so
Awesome.
at some point I'd like to come down and maybe bring a couple staff people.
Be great.
Just kind of walk you through some of the things that we do.
Advice on that.
Yeah,
And get Heidi, get met Heidi at our new marketing coordinator, our new Erin.
Okay.
Yep, she started in May, so
Awesome.
That's exciting.
yeah.
That'd be fun.
And
Mhm.
Gotta come on like a Wednesday, Thursday, brewery day. Gotta come on a brewery day.
okay. Twist our arms.
It's just kind of like the order, like the brewery wasn't open Monday, Tuesday, so I just special meeting with people that are on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Stephanie, did you get my email about UNL downtown planning?
I think I saw your name come across, but I don't remember reading it. But now that you say that, I'll go back and reread it.
Kelechi, someone else deserves some dum-dums now.
My husband puts both out in his classroom, says, you can grab whatever you're feeling today. You can grab a dum-dum, you can grab a Smartie. Just want to label them.
What does he teach?
Math.
Is everybody on a break right now?
The other group's kind of wrapping up, so we had a couple
Yeah.
restroom breaks, so we'll be reconvening.
Okay. I'm gonna step out just for a second.
Sounds
You
good?
guys go this morning. Well, thank you for your participation. Does anyone mind sharing, what you got from your group with the full group? Do you have yeah.
See that, bud?
So I believe this group had about 5 priorities and you have 5 priorities. So
And I can't keep this script, so we have to take this.
we're going to iron that out and so we're looking at having just about 7 to 10, 5 to 7
Do you need
priorities.
to kick Kim and Brooke back in?
Yeah, so you're looking for us to give kind of just a little bit of color commentary on the.
Yes.
Yeah, so we had the connectivity and resilience, so you can see the 3 priority areas: infrastructure, tourism, disaster preparedness that we talked about. Robust discussions on the SWOT analysis, the 5 that we came up with, you can see there, the infrastructure broadband, I think no explanation needed there. Why connectivity matters, especially for Southeast Nebraska. We had the disaster resilience and planning. We had some discussion around, obviously, the 2019 floods and COVID. Like in our lifetimes, literally what just happened within the last like 2-3 years as we're all like experts in it now. But we need to prepare for the next stuff because it's coming and I think it's going to speed up. So we had good, robust discussion on that. Transportation connectivity. We're acknowledging, yes, we're connected in Southeast Nebraska, but we can do better. And so, yeah, we have some needs there. We talked about specifically things like bridges and you know, some of the issues we have around that and just needing to be more acknowledging some of the challenges we have and how we fix it. And quality of life, childcare, recreation, and it's a quality of life system specifically. I think that's it there. Quality of life system. Yeah.
What is it? Life systems?
We had affordable childcare.
Yeah. Recreation.
Yeah, and recreation. Yep. And we kind of term that quality of life systems in general. Again, I think that's relatively understandable there. And then marketing, I think we have tremendous assets in Southeast Nebraska, and we've talked about all the cool stuff we have, but we do a pretty poor job in marketing it and letting people know about it. It's kind of like our own well-kept secret, and it's like, well, it's not going to get, we're not going to get bigger, better, badder if we don't share the story. So that was clear as we talked about tourism. We got great stuff. We just have to tell people about it.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and speak to these points because I think I'm the only one that can read my. So first, briefly touching on our SWOT analysis, for kind of the equitable growth, we thought that housing was really key. A strength is that we do have some strong housing programs. We do have some good care deeply about these issues. And we've seen some creative strategies work in different communities in our region. To share more people of that. One thing we also noted is we have a lot of great hospitals, really good healthcare, so people stay in their homes longer. They enjoy a better, longer quality of life that's going to help with that generational wealth and transition. Some opportunities that we saw are to work more closely with ESUs to do more communication and outreach with employers, realizing that they're the first line to recruiting new people into our communities and making sure that realtors are involved in that conversation, can connect people to housing. And figuring out how we can educate and train county commissioners and other folks that maybe think more at the infrastructure level to see housing as infrastructure. And to see it as a community asset that needs to be protected by the municipalities, the counties, the state, and partner organizations. We saw things like automation for employment as opportunities, not threats. We thought programs like Work Keys are really great opportunities for our region. And we think apprenticeships and internships should be expanded, especially when they're allowing employers to fill gaps that maybe in the past they didn't want to hire younger people. Need it, and there's also need by your path in the community. In terms of weaknesses, we saw local elected officials within our county and community maybe have the wrong set of lenses on. They're looking too much to infrastructure and not seeing the details, the people, the homes, the relationships. And some threats that we saw to our region are simply time. We're an aging population. We have an aging workforce. We don't need to brand ourselves as inclusive, not being for everyone. We don't need to perpetuate a lack of the wages that don't support the end and be able to expand the community. We need better wages, we need more flexible. We really liked opportunities like more 3x12 shifts for employment, more remote work, and the broadband infrastructure. So 5 goals that we came up with are supporting and expanding our current housing programs, utilizing effective communication to make sure that local officials know about these programs, and we're also more tied into the importance of economic development with funding that may become available to them. We want to improve ERE, business retention and expansion coordination, and make sure that it brings together communities with their ESUs, with employers, at job fairs, getting the Department of Labor, their agencies to support this, making sure that we brand our locations as accessible, inclusive, inviting, and available within people's reach. And finally, creating third spaces, both physically and digitally, where people can talk up what their experiences are, ask questions, get to know these communities, and kind of ease into feeling of a sense of home.
Thank you so much. These are really good ideas, and I think having a
Smartness.
yeah, everyone deserves smarties. Yeah, you guys deserve smarties.
We were slow.
So what I would love for us to take a look at is but I would want to encourage us to also look at the priorities from this angle, and if you can just give an asterisk or use a form of language on your document so we can know which priorities are achievable in a 5-year time frame and which priority has the highest impact on the region and which priority best promotes economic resilience, because this is what EDA requires of us, the Economic Development Agency. So this is the criteria they use to gauge their priority. So it would be great if we're able to also note that down, and we can go from there. You don't have to talk about it, but because we're running out of time. And so that is,
Can this be encapsulated and sent to us that we could then respond back to you as homework to pick one priority for each of the, assign those numbers to each of those?
yes.
That might be an easier way to do it.
Yes, that's what I thought of. But I don't know who's going to respond to my assignments. The last assignments I
I started it.
He did. Well, I don't want to call him, but Lucas did.
Did we get done?
But he said it took him hours.
Oh, we
So we need it shorter. Send him like once a week. A little assignment. Big
So
steps.
in other words, it's not too late to turn it in.
It's not too late. Yeah, you can do this as an assignment and turn it in next week.
Yeah, Butler County, we just added Butler County to the survey today, right?
Yeah, we did that.
I did do that.
Yeah, Kelly did that. So yeah.
I think it'd be helpful to be able to see these worded out.
Yeah.
And maybe you guys want to work with them in the office a little bit.
Yeah.
before you send it back
Yes.
out, but just to help us understand what you guys really meant and vice versa.
Yes.
Do you know,
And there is one more. Yeah.
on the survey results, do you know area-wise how organized this is first? The people that are answering it, are we missing? I've shared it many, many times via email and social media.
It's like 2.6 responses. There's Butler was 0 just because they were added this morning. there was more, I don't think, in responses. I can't, there was one that had 15% accounting. It could have been there.
Okay, we'll keep sharing it if you
Yes.
want us to.
Yes, I would
We want to
appreciate
extend the
that.
deadline.
Well, it was due today, but we can always extend. We can extend it for like a week.
Yeah.
Totally, right?
Last question.
Okay.
Especially with adding Butler County this morning, give them time to, yeah.
Okay.
Got an idea? I don't know if you want to spend the money, Tom, but why don't you do a boost for the counties on Facebook with the survey?
Sure.
Give away Yeti.
I've been trying to get him to boost stuff.
Tom.
So there's one more focus group session. I'm thinking we can do it as an assignment. But at the same time, let's just take a look at it. This is where we figure out the action plan. And it's talking about previous CEDS initiatives, because in the previous CEDS, we had talked about, we made an action plan for broadband expansion, and that has been on display recently. We've been doing a lot of efforts to expand broadband networks across the region and also across the state. So whatever ideas we put into the action plans, we should be intentional about those, because they'll definitely come to fruition at some point, probably 5 years from now, but at some point they'll definitely come to fruition. So it would be great if we're very intentional about our action plans. And what makes an action plan is basically an initiative and a project. So an initiative should be directly linked to our priorities. I think there's a sample. There's a sample like on your table, and it would be great if we're able to use this format. So the initiatives should tie into the priorities. So this is a sample. I just used local business development, for instance, and following that initiative there should be projects, and projects should be specific, measurable, and it should have a time frame. Another key thing is also partnerships. We should be able to talk about aspirational partners that we want for some certain projects, and also come up with ideas for deliverables. Mostly, it's usually planning projects or capital investment projects or technical assistance projects. So it would be great if we're able to think in that line. I don't know if we want to do one more session of this focus group and just come up with an initiative. If you guys are okay with that, because that was how we had planned for it. And then, because we need a couple of initiatives. Well, not a couple, we need a bunch actually. So that will be a take-home assignment. And I'm hoping that the members of this committee are able to respond to the assignments in due time, because this is the most important part of the CEDS. And it's about 40% of the CEDS. So it would be great if we're very responsive, and every input is very necessary to develop the CEDS. So we can have the focus group session right away, and we can come up with just one initiative and just one project. And it's okay for those projects to be aspirational and tentative. Let's get to that. Okay. Yes, please.
Kalichi, at the end goal,
Yes.
we have initiatives and projects under each of these, or multiple ones, or what is it? What should the end game? kind of
Yeah,
look
so
like?
good question, Crystal. So the end game is to have for like infrastructure and broadband, you can have an initiative or a couple of initiatives, and then on
So are we tackling each, we're going
We're just
to
gonna do ours.
stars?
I should just pick one of those,
Wait,
and have at least one initiative, have
it's
an
really
initiative.
like.
Let's get one and knock it out.
I can. Okay, so should we pick one? Yeah, let's pick one and
Hey,
we're
Kim.
oh,
Oh.
sure. We're gonna pick something off of our list. Did they get your computer working or is this another computer?
She on?
You're muted.
She's muted.
Or where sound is off.
We see words, we can't hear anything. Hey,
There we
everyone.
My other computer, my work computer still is not going.
Good luck. Okay, so we're gonna develop real quick in the next 10 minutes, an initiative and a program off of one of our priorities.
How much about local?
Yeah.
Local elected officials?
That's a
Okay.
good, yeah.
So I think you could partner with, I mean, the partners could be NACO, NIDA, the development districts. and the
League.
economic developers.
Local economic developers, yep.
Say again?
League of Municipalities is
Yeah.
for all of the cities and villages.
That's where they
Yeah.
go.
Or some
Yeah.
of them actually, or some engage with. The problem is not the problem, but the way right now, the best way to communicate and work with your county officials or your city council members is being able to break bread with them and have a couple beers, but not everybody wants to do that.
Right.
So how do we replicate that
I know,
relationship building?
I think an initial step, and I've talked to Deb, Tadier, worked about this before, I've talked to Walker as well. From NIDA's perspective, get NIDA around them at NACO convention. Because they're always looking for speakers. And I think it'd be really cool if we could create some sort of program where we get best practices. It costs very little or nothing, just as a way to showcase what other communities.
So is getting in front of them at a NACO or a league meeting, is that's an initiative or a program underneath our initiative, which is to
Yeah,
somehow to improve the,
bring partners together to improve communication.
with local officials, something along those lines.
Yeah, and I think if they heard it, because they've got what, a spring and a fall.
The league does.
League has the
League
winter and
does.
or I don't know what they call it, the one in
Yeah, I
February.
don't-
Why have we never
Twice a
engaged
year.
What's that?
I've never even thought to engage with them. We're engaged with the league all the time legislatively. I'm saying NIDA,
Yeah.
Yeah,
county never, not so much.
No.
I've talked to John over there before, John Cannon. He'd jump at the chance, because that's what he does. We'll go around and sit
John, the
down.
executive director? Or is
He's
he-
the assistant.
Just, okay, I don't know who the director is.
I don't know,
Daco used to, wasn't it Larry Dix?
It was
for a
Larry
long
Dix for a long time. I don't know if Larry's still there or not.
I don't know. I just know John. But yeah, I think that'd be a great way, and they're always looking for presenters at their different conferences. So 30-minute presentation, or even a panel with successful programs.
Panel would be good. Be more comfortable, probably to get more people involved and
Yeah.
more diverse
Get
presentation.
some
John
geographic.
is the executive director.
Oh, John is?
Yeah, because Larry is the executive director emeritus, and then
Okay.
John Cannon is the
So
executive
John's the
director.
new director.
Yeah.
Okay.
John's moved-
Yep.
and the
I was
transition there.
surprised at how many county commissioners attend NACO, like
They
a lot of,
all
like, they all
do.
go. It's
They
like
do.
they put it on their calendars and
Their
everything gets
wives-
shut down.
Wives or
Exactly.
husbands go, it's a whole deal.
It is.
Yeah.
My mom went for a million years and my dad always went with her.
Sure.
Now my
They have a
dad,
meet, their office is next to our building, we're at by Billy's. And if they're having a meeting over there, our parking lot gets filled up
I
with
bet.
them or their wives sitting in the vehicle waiting, coming back to pick them up.
Yeah.
You know,
Because the
you're in
majority
my
of them,
parking spot.
because the majority of them are men. It's
Yeah.
an old white men's club.
Yep.
So how would we frame the initiative then? What's the buzzword? How would we describe this in overall?
County official engagement.
Or in this local official,
Yeah.
Local-
well, but how it's worded here, you know,
Local official engagement initiative.
I guess I don't know, do we try to write something like, at least you have something on the first one where it's improve local business outcomes and increase employment opportunities to advance.
We can work on that.
So, but it's basically, yeah, you write it in shorthand and figure it out, but we're talking about
And
better engagement of local
local
elected officials.
even on the city,
Cities.
because I know like when Caleb was resuscitating Ashland economic development, they had people on their council that were just opposed to giving it a dime.
Absolutely.
They wanted to cut funding to economic development. And it's taken 6 months to convince them that it's a good investment.
That's to me, that's a remarkably short period of time. I am surprised that you can do it in 6 months, but I mean, but I think they do. The smaller communities don't necessarily, they haven't seen that economic development happen.
They don't understand.
And they don't understand the time it takes. They don't understand the effort it takes.
Well, sometimes I think that they think of economic development as only like recruiting a factory, like,
Yes.
yeah. We need economic development Humboldt, let's bring a factory in. Well, there's so much more that we can do on our scale that we can afford versus
With a
bringing
greater
factory in.
impact.
Yeah, exactly.
So then I guess the one project would be developing that,
Economic developers panel.
whatever you want to call it right now, a
Yeah.
panel or that, I mean, literally almost a canned presentation
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
that anybody, you could pick 3 people from NEDA and they could all follow the basic framework, but it'd
Yeah.
be personalized
Put their own
to their
flavor in it.
experience.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
And try to get in front of NACO and the
It's almost a
league.
curriculum, like an
Yeah.
economic development
It
101.
should
What
be.
is
Yeah.
economic
It should be,
development? Yeah.
I think that would be an interesting approach.
To
create
ultimately,
curriculum.
maybe that's the 5-year goal,
Yeah,
is to
Yeah.
have this as a regular
We
thing,
did,
so.
this is something.
regular session
Yeah.
during their,
And we do like a breakfast thing where it's like a new people, like new members, and then or like then we have like a one that's like an annual
workshop.
update of, update the workshop or whatever.
This is something we did, I did in St. Joe, we actually borrowed a game, and it was for county officials, so they were tasked with building an economic development program, but they only had so much money to do it.
That sounds like the poverty simulation.
It is,
Economic
it's
development.
very similar to a poverty simulation, but for economic developers. So you started having to weigh their resources on how to spend it. I mean, do you hire an full-time economic developer? Do you hire a part-time and increase your marketing?
From the NEDA perspective, Walker and I talked about this briefly, but hosting a number of elected officials at the NEDA conference and providing scholarships or something, and have a special content for them or a special welcome, just so they can see what we're actually doing and talking about. For some people, that means they need to be on better behavior while they're away from their hometowns for a couple days. But that's kind of along those same lines as bringing them into our world.
well, see, Heartland actually has a scholarship for a community volunteer and or elected official, basically. In my time on the board, I can only think of twice it's been used. Really. And it was Michelle Coolidge when she was mayor of Bayard, and now she's an economic development practitioner. And Leslie Clark from Auburn Development Council this year. That's the only 2 times I know 100% sure that the scholarship's actually been used. So we continue to promote that until everybody else catches on, I guess.
Sure.
Or does NEDA set up a scholarship for, or do we somehow convince the league or somehow to have them figure, that's a long range plan thing.
There's some good collaboration between the league, NACO, and NEDA.
And if you even classified it as economic/community development, you could use a broader, a bigger paintbrush, and you could focus on workforce development, economic development, housing, because a lot of the folks that I've worked with, when you talk economic development, they're talking, smokestack chasing, and not housing.
Not
or
community
workforce,
development.
Or,
Parks
improving
and
your
Rec.
downtown.
Yeah, I guess I don't know that we want to, maybe we want to broaden this a little bit to also say staff. Because, I mean, the Nebraska Planning and Zoning Administrators Association, I think that's NPZA.
Yeah.
They're always looking for speakers. I mean, they have a lot of speakers on TIP and different things, but maybe not on a broader economic. I mean, they asked us to sponsor their conference years ago. We've just been doing, our sponsorship has been, I think we're still doing it, printing their brochure for them. But I just have never been able, time-wise, it happens in March, I've only been able to actually physically go for part of it once, maybe twice.
It's a good, I went to every one when I was in
Did you?
planning school. But
Yeah, but I think that's another inroad to some of that
Well, and elected officials turn over and you've got
Yeah,
career practitioners
good
that are
point.
out there and they're moving from town to town
That's a
and they're
good point.
spreading a message of what economic
Yeah.
development
But it
is.
seems like all you see there is like, you'll see Chad Navity, Grand Island, then you'll see just consultants, like Keith Marvin. Like you don't see planners from Omaha
Yeah.
or Lincoln going out.
Because it's probably more of a rural.
Very
group.
much so.
But I mean, you'll see,
County officials,
you'll see some people from the planning, their local planning commissions though too.
especially first timers.
Who are elect, they're appointed, I guess you'd say, to that. So I mean, that's another
Sure.
segment maybe.
What about county clerks? Because, I mean,
Clerk school?
long-term wise, the clerks
Right.
are the stable piece there.
Well, like
Elected officials come and go. but-
city clerks go to, they have a clerk school that they go to. But they also go to all of the league, most of them go to the league conferences and stuff like
But
that.
the inroads to them would again be through the league.
Right, through the league, yeah.
You get a lot of clerks that feel really, oh, I don't want to do grants, they're scary and hard. And some that have done one before are awesome to work with. It'd be really cool if every clerk in our region, whether they thought they wanted a grant or not, was trained in what they would need to know to feel comfortable.
1,000,000%, I agree with you. Grants are scary because they come out and they say, okay, there's like this rule, this rule, this rule, this rule, this rule. And, as a clerk, you're already responsible for so much overarching stuff the way it is. So they're like, gosh, do I really want another thing on my plate? But they are detail oriented people. And so they can do all of that stuff. It's just, and maybe that's part of it is at some of these conferences that we go to for the league, they talk about grants more so too. I mean, that's probably something I need to communicate to the league, but, to understanding how to.
I just remembered when Jonathan, and not your staff anymore, but when we were doing, when we were helping the Milford with their leadership certification, during that process, Jonathan had me go do, I did a 30-minute presentation during a Milford Council working session prior to the actual council starting on kind of just broad sense of economic development, what the current trends are and their role in economic development kind of a thing. So actually, I guess I have that presentation somewhere.
I think that's a good thing to communicate to elected officials. They don't.
Because I was wondering, do we start what we're talking about here? Is that, are we piloting some of this with the Southeast region?
Statewide.
Or going straight to the statewide?
I think it should go statewide.
Okay.
And I also think that, and I've had many conversations with Enrock on this. Because I think it should start with the newly elected officials, because there is a special session for the newly elected officials. And whether it's county commissioners, county board supervisors, or city council, it needs to start there. And then maybe at some point engage the people that have been there for a while. But we need to start a foundation.
To me, if you have a model.
I think when they're first walking in the door, setting that council chamber for the first time, that's when you really need to.
I wonder how many of them campaign on economic development but don't really know what it is.
All of them.
Yeah.
Between being a local elected official and being a school board member, somebody elected school board member. We had intensive training on the school board. I've been trained. I've been trained on what my role is versus the superintendent's role and how I follow chain of command. I've been talked about how we feed over all these different things and budgets and annual cycles and Rule 10 and how the department fits in. None of that happened at the local level. I've been a council member and a mayor for 8 years, 10 years total or whatever.
Show up to the meeting and you vote.
But that's the thing. In the league, I'd get a quarterly or monthly, thing in the mail that I read through was interesting, but I never felt that connectedness that, it was, they got bulk mail to the city office. They just kind of handed them to us and I was like, okay, like this is my thing or whatever. And then you'd get on the mailing list and you get one directly delivered to your home. That was the only thing.
I think Beatrice has a really good, their clerk might do a really good welcome to being a council person kind of
Just a
thing.
good orientation.
Yeah.
Aaron,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Kim's got her hand up.
Well, talking about school, that would be another organization to add to this because they're very much a part of the economic development and community development region there. We've been working with our new superintendent in Auburn, and I think he's going to join the ADC board now because he understands as a school official the role that they play in the economic development of the community.
They're a major employer and they're a big draw. If people are looking for quality of life, where they want to live and how that fits in with business and creation.
Plus
and
he's training
retention.
future employees,
Exactly.
hopefully.
Yep.
Yeah.
A big chunk of your human capital
Yep.
in your community.
Do you think that the league would want to partner with NIDA? When they do their quarterly newsletters or whatever, to have a column in there? Are they desperate for that sort of, I don't know, information? Because, I mean, I think it'd be interesting, I mean, as far as like best practices, where NIDA's got enough of a membership to where there could be a story every quarter about how they engage, or how that economic developer engaged the county officials in some, like, for example, we're working in Jefferson County right now. Jefferson County, they have been fighting for years to pave the road to Endicott Clay because the existing one is in a floodplain. We have finally were able to find them what, $2.6 million.
Yep.
And then they contributed some money and Endicott Clay contributed some money, but we're able to keep Endicott Clay happy by renovating or rebuilding the road. But I think that would be an interesting article. It didn't.
That pull on all their heartstrings.
Yeah, it didn't.
Infrastructure.
It didn't. Yeah, it built a
Haul some
road.
gravel, I'm sure. At some point.
Kept the business.
It didn't touch any of their money because they had reuse money that they were either going to have to give back to this state or use on this. And then Endicott Clay kicked in the material. But I'm just curious if NIDA and NACO could do something like that, or even the league. I just think.
I know, speaking of for the NIDA board, I think very open to this. Any collaboration with the league or chamber or NACO.
If we were able to facilitate a call between John Cannon and the NIDA board, do you think there's any interest in that?
Yeah, or even just the exec committee, because you got Brian, myself, Walker, Mike Feakin.
Darren Robbins,
Darren's on the board now.
he's on the board. I
Darren,
don't know if he's
Darren,
if he was in the
Collier.
cycle yet, but
Brooke Aiken.
yeah. Because I think you're probably better off if you could figure out a way to do this as, maybe it's a guest columnist each time,
Right.
so it's not
Yeah.
one person
Right.
responsible
Yeah.
for.
Exactly.
Yeah, have Lisa give the rest of us some turns.
I was thinking, well, she might want to do all of them, but I was thinking somebody might not want to do all of them. Tell her you gave her assignment as you leave.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks so
thank
much.
you guys.
We'll catch up with you later.
All right.
Hi, Trevor.
My husband teaches elementary school. I know these.
Blueberry, right?
Blueberry.
Blueberry.
Yeah.
I have
I
a picture my
think-
kids, I think they've been sniffing them, like they're 2 and 4, they're just little mustaches and nose are just multicolored. And I was like, oh, you have Betty for this classroom, that's nice.
Trying to do something like this would help on all these other areas as well.
Mhm.
You know, if you can get everybody aligned in the same area, and part of it's just that understanding that economic development is a long-term process.
Yeah. And I remember working with economic developers and they were amazing. I mean, I remember one, he in his tenure, he was able to land 2 prisons, which some people liked, some people didn't. They were major employers, but he also landed a Case New Holland distribution plant. I mean, 6 states were
Sweet.
fighting for this, and he landed this. And within 4 years, his elected officials were like, okay, what have you
They've
done
done
now?
now,
What's
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And they let him go. They eliminated the program. A city of 10,000 has 0 economic development staffing
Today. Well, the address went from having a program to not having anything at all 6 years ago, basically, for 2 years, literally not having a countywide economic development program, to back to where they are now. It's probably closer to 8. But I mean, things are cyclical. And if you don't have that education or that, in their case, it was just the transition, I think, from one generation to another, and a consistent understanding of the importance of economic development, or just the county, city fighting that goes on sometimes, that, you know, you can lose it, but, you know, you had an example of, they lost it for a while.
Yeah, you need a presence there. And
Yeah.
everyone's fighting. One of my, a frustration was I was working with 2 of our member counties about creating an economic development position. One of them was fully funded and one of them has nothing right now. And having that conversation about, hey, why don't you hire one person, pay them a little bit more so you're able to keep them? Because that was the problem. There was always constant turnover. Hire them, good benefits, decent pay, a budget for marketing, a budget for attending trade shows. Like, we can't do that. We can't work with another county because what happens if they have a lead? Really? It's not a bad thing.
You're still gonna benefit.
You're still gonna benefit.
You don't have nothing but a chance at something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Some people have a hard time wrapping their head around that you're going to a conference and you're working.
Yes.
That, you know, you're going to meetings, you're going to lunches, you're going to
That's because they
dinners, and
go
that's.
to the National Association meetings of their
Yeah.
elected officials. They know what goes on
They
there.
know.
Yeah, I've got a David City call.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we're talking with Dr. Kang.
I think Stephanie, in my case, our elected officials here don't go anywhere, so they don't know what it's like to go to a meeting. Meeting.
That's true.
Yes, so we're talking.
That's true.
Okay.
I think the hardest thing for elected
Yeah.
officials and economic development is the time
Yeah.
that it takes. They can't grasp
Yeah.
the patience and
Well,
the.
that's the other thing, Tom, on Kim's point was sometimes elected officials don't travel anywhere.
Yeah.
So whatever we're doing, making it so that they could do it virtually or
Sure.
watch at their leisure,
Yep.
you know, on demand kind of a thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Needs to be worked into this too.
You know, that was the thing we tried to do with that broadband 101. That Christopher Mitchell, I don't know if you had a chance to watch those, but you know, I've been working on broadband since 2000. And I always thought I had a pretty good understanding of how it works. And watching that broadband 101, the very first episode, I learned so much. And then listening to episode number 2 with Brooke and the mayor of Valentine.
Kyle Margaret.
Kyle, yeah. It was really inspiring. The third one was amazing because once again, I learned about all these barriers and challenges to building out broadband and why communities can't do it, the problems they have in working with these private companies. But I think it'd be cool to create a library, especially if Nita could do that. Kim's asking a question.
No, go ahead, finish your point. I just have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I know Crystal and Tom, you guys are working on the Lead for Nebraska fellow.
Yeah.
So it's Lead for America, Lead for Nebraska. So Auburn Development Council is, I'm pretty sure we're hosting a fellow. So that'll be focused on broadband and ED for the next 2 years. So still trying to work and getting a couple partners to help fund it, but
So
getting
Kim,
close.
we got 2 of those. One's gonna be parked in Humboldt and one's gonna be parked here in Lincoln. So yeah, let us know how we can help with that. Yep, I think ours is gonna be focused strictly on broadband. So they might work with Waverly on how to build a very targeted plan to build out broadband for Waverly.
Send them my way.
Yeah, same with
Give them my
Auburn
number.
or Humboldt or Fall City. But the idea is to really create some specific approaches to broadband deployment across this region, especially with the billions of dollars coming down.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Leslie's taken lead on that project because that's a full-time project. Right
Yeah.
there. So,
I gotta go talk to David City now. Thanks, guys.
I'll fill Kelly in on both
bye,
counties.
Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
Yep.
Thanks, Stephanie.
I think we could probably do another.
Are you guys done?
Probably in an hour.
I think we got
Close
some
to
wrap
it.
up comments, but close.
Oh,
I think they're talking about one more meeting, maybe just by
Yeah.
Zoom, to wrap all this up. If we could pull this off, just one off, that's kind of lays the groundwork for everything else, really.
I'm gonna say no. I need to learn to say no.
Okay,
But honestly, if you can just get the group together, just the logistics of creating the space for us, I think we can actually do the work that we need to do.
You guys hear that?
Okay,
Thanks
for the input, and I think this is a good conversation, and this conversation has to keep on going. So I was hoping if there's a way the group can meet together on your own time and just iron out your action plans, and that would be the final meeting, just on your own time, and yeah, just that, really.
Yeah, it's doable.
I was gonna say, that would be tremendous.
Yeah.
Just a
Yeah, I think so, in one virtual call,
Yeah,
maybe,
one
and
virtual call, one Zoom call.
sharing some documents back and forth, some drafts. Yeah.
So who's gonna volunteer to be the captain of the ship?
One of these two.
Tom. That's what happens when you leave the meeting.
Exactly, you get elected president.
Or I can facilitate the group and I probably send you a little poll to figure what time.
If you want to set up a doodle poll, we'll coordinate
We'll
it
work it from there.
ourselves and get it scheduled up.
That'll work.
That'll
You
work.
know.
So you can make sure we're doing our job,
Yeah.
Chief.
Yeah, thanks, Christopher.
Jonathan, what's your schedule like the next couple weeks? Okay, how about July?
What do you need? And I can try to make it work.
I would just I'll send you a note. Let's maybe try and come out for an hour.
Yeah.
Just-
We'd love to have it.
Okay. I'd be curious to see your spec building site, what you're doing there, and just a few things, nothing major. Okay,
This year, we're having a big wrap
I
up.
need to do that with Lisa too, so maybe I'll do it en route, that way.
I was gonna say, do the loop tour.
Yep, all right, thanks.
Him situated over here instead of here in the big place. Okay. Oh,
do you need me to leave?
No.
Crystal, you need me to leave my room?
they'll switch you.
They'll switch you back to share
We're just
screen.
trying to share stuff up front. I want to make sure you guys can see it virtually.
Okay.
Did they have Kim come from here to over there?
We're gonna start working and do all that out. Grown.
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we did, because I was doing some of that. Okay.
Okay, they're kicking you out, back into the other one.
Okay.
So,
She was in a breakout. Okay.
Yes.
So I'll work with each group individually.
Sure.
Thank you, Crystal. I'll work with each
I'm a baby's
group.
little right, I know. And I act young because I work with children.
No, this is we're done. I just wanna clear the space for the area. I'll work with each group individually to set up a time that works for each group in your own time and space, and you guys can make more time to come up with more action plans, and that will be the final phase of the project. And just to the website,
Oh, yeah.
just to show you guys what the staff at STEM is doing. I mean, we can put our hands together for the STEM staff. Yeah, because.
Yes, thank you guys.
So for this year, we're taking. For this year, we're taking the CEDS online. So virtually everything we're doing, everything gotten from this meeting would definitely go online. And hopefully if we have our action plans, we can just populate the pages. And then we have a virtual CEDS, and we would also have document CEDS as well.
As fun as these things are to haul around and mail out and hand out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good track record for us. And we're happy to share this with you when it's done. And well, this is the end of the meeting, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Put the table back.
You can, touch it by a new TV. My kids broke the TV last night. It was a video controller that flipped out of someone's hand.